What's up, everybody? What's going on? Oh, you've got your volume up again every single time.
It's only halfway up.
Well,
it does it by default sometimes.
Okay, he just forgets to turn the volume.
When you reset your tablet, it just by default puts it on the middle.
Yeah.
So
it's Tuesday today, and we're still in the Universal Monster kind of groove.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And this is a follow-up to the two that we did about Dracula, 1931.
Yes.
This is the sequel to the English Dracula, 1931. It's called Dracula's Daughter from 1936.
1936,
Yeah.
yes. 5 years later.
And a decent sequel. A lot better than Son of Dracula. All right, which is the third
one.
Yeah, Lon Chaney. Yeah, no. But this one was a decent movie. I liked it.
Well, this one I kind of feel like if you're going to do a sequel, this is kind of like, I mean, the way they did with Bride of Frankenstein too, this is like the way to do it right, because it went through like a bunch of different iterations, like what the story was supposed to be. But I think they settled on a good thing. Like, I think initially Bela Lugosi was supposed to be in it. Like, I think they were going to do some scenes, like, set back in the day, like, kind of...
Like a prequel.
It's like a prequel or, like, exploring his history, and then it was going to jump ahead to the present day. And I think they had an idea initially,
That'd have been good, though.
Yeah, that would have been good, too.
Yeah.
But I think they had an idea also initially that Dracula's daughter was going to have lived in the castle, like Dracula's castle, and then, like, Van Helsing would have gone back to the castle to kill the vampire brides, but then, like, found her, like, she was hiding someplace else.
That would have been
good, too. So that was another idea they were throwing around.
That would have been good.
But, well, what happened with this one, but like I said, I think it's good that they just kind of, like, I mean, Bela Lugosi ended up not being in it, but I think that's okay, because they just went, it's still in the same universe, and honestly, it's just like... the start of it takes place like literally like minutes after the first movie ended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Van Helsing has just staked Dracula.
Yeah.
And then like a few minutes later, like the cops come and be like, what the fuck is going on?
Murder.
And he gets accused of murder, which is what would happen in real
Right.
life because he's like, yeah, I stabbed him. He was a vampire.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, tell us another one.
They didn't ever really bring up what happened to Renfield, because Renfield was killed.
Yeah, that's right.
He was thrown off the stairs. Well, he's Renfield in the Spanish version. He's he's
he's
Renfield.
still Renfield,
He's still
yeah.
Renfield in the English
Renfield
version
in
too.
both of
Yeah,
them.
that's right. So they never did mention what happened to his body. They would have found that. They would have accused Van Helsing of killing him also.
Yeah, it's like I thought that they mentioned it, but maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
Like, because weren't they saying there's two dead people in there, and like one of them has the stake through the heart?
They couldn't accuse him of killing Lucy because she was already legally dead.
Yeah, that's true.
They just cut her head off.
Yeah, even though they didn't mention that in the English language version, which we kept bringing up,
Right.
that they never that they just left that hanging.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, so that's kind of what happened. So you have Van Helsing, who I think that guy that plays Van Helsing, Edward Van Sloan, he was the same guy that played Van Helsing in the first one, but he's like the only repeating character, which kind of makes sense because, you know, it was kind of like it goes in a different direction slightly. But what they were going to do, they initially wanted to, because remember how when they made Nosferatu back in the 1920s, and Bram Stoker's widow sued them, you know, and so they wanted to like destroy all this. So, you know, she's very sue happy. I mean, it's, you know, I didn't want to like disparage or anything like that, because that was like, you know, their intellectual property and they, you know, and stuff like that. So they should be compensated for the shit. But they were kind of worried. What they wanted to do with this one is that there was an excised chapter from the original novel by Bram Stoker. And after he died, it was actually published separately, like as a short story, which is called Dracula's Guest. Now, they've actually made that into a film subsequently, but I think that was kind of like the idea behind this one initially, even though it's, if I remember, it's been a long time since I've read that story, but I don't remember this one having anything really to do with that story. But that was kind of the direction they were going to go in. And then many people have pointed out, especially because of like the lesbian angle that comes up in this one, which actually I was surprised they got away with the shit they got away with in this movie in 1936. But so a lot of people have said that there's like a little bit of a whiff of Carmilla in this as well.
Yeah.
By Sheridan Fanu, which, like I said, if you don't know your horror literature, that's actually older than Dracula. That was published in 1872 and is probably kind of like the first lesbian vampire story like ever written that they know of, you know what I mean?
It's not that is not a modern trope. That was the original.
No.
Yeah.
One thing, this movie though, as far as I know, this is the first film, as in, not in literature or anything, but the first film appearance of a reluctant vampire.
Yeah.
Which is now a very, very common trope.
Yeah. Louis was like that.
Well, Anne Rice was a big fan of this movie. And, she actually acknowledged, I think later on, that that this had been influential, particularly, like I said, in the reluctant.
I think it also came from Mama Waldy from Dracula, too.
Yeah.
He didn't really want to be he didn't want to be a vampire. He wasn't given the choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, I guess the same thing. Well, they don't really specify in this one because the vampire in this one is she's named, what was her last name? Zaliska?
Yes, I think it was. Yes,
something like that. Like she's a countess, right? And I don't think they go into the specifics of how she exactly got turned. You're led to believe, I'm guessing, that Dracula turned her. I don't think she's actually his biological daughter.
I thought it maybe was. Because he said he came from a family of them.
Maybe. But she was much, much younger than he was. So I'm not really sure how that would have worked out.
What do you mean?
Well, I think at some point, because like at the very beginning, when Van Helsing has staked Dracula and is like talking to the cops about it.
Yeah.
And then they asked him like, how long has this man been dead? And he says, about 500 years, which I was like, wow, yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, just like, so he was saying he was about 500 years old, or he'd been around for that long.
Yeah.
Whereas I think later on in the movie, they say that the Countess has only been dead or only been a vampire for like 100-ish years.
Yeah, so he had 400 years. He had a lot of time to have a daughter.
Right, but it's like, could he have a daughter like after he was already undead?
That's what they're implying.
How does that work?
A Strigoi could do it.
Well, I know that, but I don't really know. I guess it doesn't matter. I'm thinking about it too much, but I don't know if it was his biological daughter or if it was just like somebody.
If it was
that he like turned.
Vampires were based on Strigoi. All right, a Strigoi could mate with a living human woman and give birth to a living vampire. According to Strigoi. That's what they're talking about, I think. I think she was born a vampire. That's my take.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible.
And then maybe they die. Or maybe you kill them, but they come back to life. As an undead vampire. She was undead. She didn't have a... But she was undead, but... Yeah. But she definitely lived as a living person long enough to reach physical maturity. Because she looked to be in her 30s, right?
Yeah, I'm imagining. Yeah, she was an adult.
Right.
She wasn't like a vampire baby. That
wasn't a vampire child, which those are in some of the stories, you know?
Yeah.
Where they're all going to be a child forever. Like,
wow, that would suck hard.
From Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
And other vampires fucking forbade that. You weren't supposed to do that, but...
Well,
Lestat did it.
I mean,
he didn't give a shit.
If vampires really existed, I mean, you could see that would actually have to be a rule because, that would be a really shitty thing to do to somebody.
Well, somebody in the past had done it before, so they knew how it turned out, evidently, and they were like, "You can't do that."
Yeah, because, like I said, that would be fucked up if, like, you never grew up, you were just a child forever. Right. That would be terrible.
I think the explanation in Interview with the Vampire is that they can't survive on their own, which they wouldn't. They couldn't pay bills. They couldn't, they could survive on their own. They'd have to have living human people, thralls, to act as their parents to do all their... So they could.
Yeah.
But they probably couldn't survive around other vampires because vampires fought each other.
Because vampires are bitches.
Yeah. They weren't as physically strong.
Yeah, that's true. They'd be smaller.
They're smaller.
They'd be smaller.
So they weren't supposed to... You weren't supposed to do it.
But yeah, so regardless of whether she just got turned by Dracula or was actually Dracula's biological daughter, she does not seem to be down with the whole vampire thing. She is like very, very reluctant to be a vampire. She just wants to not be a vampire anymore. So like I said, that's kind of like, I think this is the first movie that showed that, like a vampire that didn't want to be a vampire, that, was maybe made into one against her will, or she was born like that and she didn't really want to be that way. So the funny thing about it too is that the actress that plays her, Gloria Holden, she wasn't real jazzed about being in this movie. She didn't want to be in a horror movie. Mainly because she had seen how Bela Lugosi had gotten typecast, and she was afraid that if she was in a horror movie, then the same thing was going to happen to her, and she wouldn't be able to get any other roles. But she was eventually like persuaded to do it. And a lot of film scholars have pointed out, they said, maybe the fact that she really didn't want to be in this movie or didn't want to be in horror actually like worked in the character's favor, because her character comes across as really kind of like, again, like reluctant and like sort of self-loathing, which is what her character is supposed to be like. So it's like her real life was like informing the character, which I thought was kind of interesting, because her performance in this is great.
Yeah, and the character looks great. She's gorgeous. She looks she looks like a statue of Hera or something, kind of like a Greek statue. She's not cute.
She's very
Just
regal,
kind of regal looking, and good figure. They try to get a lot out of it.
She looks like she should be on the mast of a ship.
Yeah. So yeah,
you know what I mean?
A statue.
She looks like that.
She looks like the statue of a Greek goddess.
She's like the perfect. She's like the perfect kind of like type for this role.
Right. She just looks real serious. Like something off of a monument. But she looks great.
Yeah, and she's got these great like outfits and stuff.
Yeah.
Too.
And they're all kind of supposed to be real low cut, but it's an optical illusion. But some of it looks like it goes right down to almost to her navel, but it's just a different. They're tricking you. It's just like flesh colored. It's flesh colored
material.
It's black and white, But and then for kind of like they do have a cutie in there. She's kind of like the damsel in distress type deal.
Hi, Pookie.
What's up?
Poking her little head up there.
And she's kind of the other way. She's real kind of a buoyant character. A lot of fun, young, cute. She's in it, and of course there's kind of like a damn Carmilla type. It's not lesbian. It's not blatant. But that's what it is.
It's blatant for 1936.
Yeah,
I'll say that. Like for now, nowadays it's like pretty like tame.
Right.
But for 1936, I was like, whoa, I can't believe they got away with that back. And they were aware of it too, because even like in early iterations of the script, actually you're gonna love this, but in one early version of the script, they were actually going to imply some BDSM action too. Like they weren't going to show anything, but they were going to have her attacking both men and women, and she would be like taking some of her victims like into her, chambers or whatever, and there was going to be like whips and shit like on the walls, and like she wasn't going to use them or touch them or nothing like that, but that's like the implication was going to be there. And I think like the censors at the time were like, absolutely not. We're not putting that in we're not putting that in the movie. So they were like pretty aware, and I think like even the scene as it came out, because the scene that everybody talks about is the scene where she picks up a girl in the street who's like, I guess she's homeless. Is she homeless?
I don't know.
I guess she's kind of like homeless, or she's like looking for work or something like that. I think the actress name is Nan Gray, and she's also gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And she's basically like, the Countess is like, she's an artist like, on the side when she's not vampiring. And
she's not vamping the fuck out of people.
Right. So she's got to do something, what I mean? So she picks up this girl and says, hey, I'll give you some money if you come back to my place and like pose for me. Yeah. And then there's kind of like a pretty suggestive scene where she's like she's like, well, I'm just going to do your head and shoulders, and like makes her kind of like take her top like down like that and all this other kind of stuff. And then she's like coming up on her and like looking at her like she wants to eat her, like, but also kind of sexually. And I'm just like, damn, it was like that. So it's like,
was it cut or something?
Huh?
Or
what do you
described? Mean? You act like you saw that scene.
No, that was in there.
Was that in there?
Yeah, you don't remember that? You don't remember that scene?
Yeah.
Were you drunk or something?
No. It's just kind of. I guess that kind of slipped my mind, but I guess that did happen. I got caught on other stuff, right?
Yeah, because she like pulls her shirt down like that.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
So they got that in there.
And like when she's like with the wine, and then she's like hypnotizing her with the ring.
That's right.
And she's like all whoa.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
I remember now.
And I was like, whoa. late night for 1936. Like I said, I mean, I thought that they got away with that was like pretty amazing. Mango said it's a very erotic movie. It is. And honestly, like a lot of it, because I think when we were talking about it before, like you said, well, it's almost kind of like a chick flick. It's not, I don't know if I'd go that far, but it does have a lot of, because there's a lot of like love triangle stuff and like jealousy stuff in it. Because not only is the Countess, like she comes to London and she steals Dracula's body, like after he gets staked. And, you know, meanwhile, Van Helsing is getting arrested and is being like, he was a vampire. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't, like, hang me for killing a vampire. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Tell us another one, buddy. Yeah. So it's like, so he's going through that situation. But then the Countess comes and steals the body, like Dracula's body, and then she burns it, like, ritualistically, because she thinks maybe that will free her from the vampire curse. But it doesn't work. So then she, like, approaches a friend of Van Helsing's, who I think he's, like, a psychiatrist, right? Like, and he's, like, a hypnotist type thing. His name is, I think, is Dr. Garth. And she thinks maybe, you know, she's tried everything else, presumably. So she's like, well, maybe, you know, the psychiatrist, or maybe he can hypnotize me out of being a vampire, which, okay, I mean, it's worth a shot. But while all that's going on, like, they almost kind of, like, talk about it like it's an addiction. You know what I mean? Like, it, like almost like she's trying to get him to, because obviously he doesn't know she's a vampire, duh, and he doesn't know that she kills people, but she's basically like, you know, I have this thing that I have to do and I'm trying to stop doing it, which is killing people. And he's like, well, why don't you just, you know, see if you can resist it? And then there's these whole things where she's saying, it's like, well, I tried to resist it, but I couldn't because, you know, she drank the blood of that girl. So that kind of whole thing is going on. But while that's going on, she also kind of falls in love with Dr. Garth. And the problem, too, is that Dr. Garth has an assistant.
No, she's
secretary.
She's the secretary.
Assistant secretary.
Fires her, but not really.
But see, the thing about it is, like, the assistant is also, like, a baroness, so she doesn't really, like, need the job.
No,
she's just
a rich
doing
girl.
it. Yeah, she's, like, a rich girl.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a lot of... That's kind of where a lot of the humor... Because this movie has a lot of humor in it, too.
She's a great character.
Because Bride of Frankenstein was also, like, kind of funny, so they wanted that same thing. Actually, matter of fact, I think they wanted James Whale to direct this as well. But he's like, yeah, I don't want to do, like, 2 horror movies in a row, like, more horror movies in a row, so he wanted to go do something else. So they got somebody else to do it. But they wanted to, like, inject that same kind of, like, dark humor, like, that had worked so well in Bride of Frankenstein. So a lot of the funny stuff comes from Dr. Garth and his secretary, like, because she's a very, like, modern, like, frisky, funny kind of
she's
woman.
Not putting up with shit.
She's not putting up with shit.
He fires her, and she's basically like, fuck you.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
fired.
She's rich. And
she doesn't need the money.
She doesn't need the money. Yeah. And she's in love with him, too. Yeah. So when Garth and the Countess start kind of making, or when the Countess starts, like, getting into, like, Dr. Garth, the secretary girl, she starts... like trying to sabotage the whole shit, you know what I mean?
Prank calling him,
like prank calling. That
was pretty good, yeah. Playing like, phone games with him
like
while he's on a date with the Countess. She's calling him,
like that,
fucking with him, impersonating other people.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, she's on the bed with her feet up in the back. Yeah. Fucking him over.
Calling from the zoo, like saying stuff about the elephant seeing pink men or something like that. Like, can you come like investigate? Yeah. But he knows it's her though. He's like, would you quit fucking around? You know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. So so the two of them are funny, but it's like that's the whole thing. Like she's jealous of the Countess. And so she's trying to, like, intervene. But it doesn't really seem like Dr. Garth, I don't think he's, like, in love with the Countess. I think he's kind of fascinated by her because she's, like, hypnotic and she's kind of weird and he's, like, wondering what her deal is. But he's kind of, I think, like, low-key in love with the secretary and he kind of knows that, and then they kind of realize it at the end. But so there's a lot of that going on. And then I forgot to mention, too, that there's another angle because the Countess also has... probably one of the best characters in the movie, her manservant, Sandor.
Yeah.
Who is like a dead ringer for Benicio del Toro. I think it looked like proto Benicio del Toro. He's fucking great in this. I love him.
My interpretation is that he was in love with her.
Yeah, he was. Well, and he was like her servant, and I guess she had promised to make him into a vampire. And then she was like,
backed
"Oh,
out.
don't need you anymore. Bye."
Yeah.
You know what I
She
mean?
dumped his ass
and then
for the
he
other
got
dude.
and for the other living dude.
Yeah, and he went fucking nuts over that.
And then he got mad. But I thought that was the implication, that he was in love with her too.
I can't believe she told him that. And at the time, I was like, why'd she just tell her thrall that?
Well, probably because she's like, I'm a vampire, bitch.
Yeah,
what are you gonna do?
Me. Yeah, but it didn't work out that way.
It didn't. No.
He knew her weaknesses and stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know how long he had been her servant or whatever, but he's just like such a great character. He's like so weird looking, and he has like this great voice. And the thing about it is that he's always like harshing her mellow, which I thought was which is also really funny, but like more like dark humor and like more subtle humor, whereas the other two couple, like that's like more overt humor, like more silly. But this one is kind of more like dark humor, because she's kind of like, I'll be alive again and it'll be wonderful, and be like, yes, it's all death, blah blah blah. So he's like always like shitting in her Cheerios, and it's like super super funny.
He didn't want her to be alive.
Right. Yeah, he's like, what's the matter?
Honestly,
what's the matter with being a vampire?
We're going to be undead. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it sounds super fun. Come on. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of what happens, is that she decides that she wants the living psychiatrist, Dr. Garth, to be her companion instead of Sandor. And so to facilitate this, she kidnaps, the secretary girl who, who Dr. Garth is in love with.
Yeah, holds her hostage.
And then takes her to Transylvania, back to the castle, back to Dracula's castle, where she presumably lived before. And so there's kind of like, then there's like a, confrontation there toward the end. But yeah, I mean, this is like a really good, it went in a totally different direction than the original Dracula. But I think that was a good idea. I mean, I think the way that it turned out, this was really kind of, I liked some of the early ideas that they had for this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I did like that, but what they ended up with, I think, was like a really, really good take on the, because there was enough the same about it. Like, it was obviously in the same universe, but there was, so there was enough same that, if you were going back for that, there was enough vampire action, but then there was like enough different that it was like its whole other thing.
What I would have done is I would have used some of those original ideas that you talked about. I thought those were good ideas. I would have done some flashback scenes with Bella in them, showing the creation of her and how that happened, some backstory. That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have to be that long, but it'd be nice if you got a good 15 minutes. Of backstory back in the day, why Dracula decided to make a daughter, how he made her. Was she born a vampire, or was she born a living vampire and then killed her at the age of 30-something, so she would stay looking like that the rest of her days? Because if she was a living vampire and you let her grow old, she would die of old age eventually, and then come up as an old vampire.
And nobody wants that.
You wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want to be an old person for eternity. So you would think if you had a daughter who was a living vampire, you'd have to kill her at the best age, and then she would come back undead.
Maybe that's what happened.
Like,
he waited till she was at peak hotness.
And it was okay. Well, peak power. Yeah. Which would have been in her 30s. You know what I mean? Type of deal. And so I think that would have been really cool to have Bella back, because he would have been a huge draw. This is fucking Dracula and his daughter. See, that
was the initial idea.
That's what I would have done.
He was supposed to. But I said, because he got killed at the end of the first one, I don't think they were going to bring him back. I think it was going to be like a flashback, like they were going to do like historical, and then they were going to like bring it up to the modern day.
That's what I would do.
But that was the initial idea. I think that they were throwing around.
You could do it like when they asked. The psychologist would have asked her, like, how'd you become a vampire? And she'd tell the story, and then you go back.
Yeah, you could do a flashback, right?
See, that's how I would have done it.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It would have been a long flashback, basically. And then there's a bunch of stuff they could have done with this. I don't really... The whole thing about making Van Helsing a murder suspect, I don't really think they needed to do that. Dracula, when he got staked, he would have turned into powder. According to the other movies, there wouldn't have been a body there. Then they would have found,
which would have been really handy, actually.
Yeah, and then you would have found
Renfield
dead, And well, there was no railing on that damn.
Yeah, that could have been an accident.
There's no railing. He could have just fall off the stairs. He was crazy. Nobody would have cared really well. Yeah, he was crazy. He fell off the stairs.
Yeah, he probably just jumped off there like a lunatic do.
Yeah, so there wouldn't have been any questions asked. And could have been that the psychiatrist guy meets this vampire. He figures out it's a vampire. He calls Van Helsing. He's a friend of his. He knows that Van Helsing has dealt with vampires. Type of deal. That type of deal.
I got some vampire.
Oh, I got a vampire killer friend. Because they had phones, you know. Calls that stuff. Yeah.
Get in the Rolodex.
Yeah. Or
vampires, werewolves,
well,
ghosts.
you know, it just would have been that fucking Van Helsing would have heard these fucking stories. Oh, these people being drained of blood. There's a vampire over there. He shows up looking for the vampire.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really need to have the murder accusation thing. I thought that just was kind of like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of wasted film. I didn't, you know what I mean?
I see what I like that addition because, you know, if you're positing a thing, like I said, normally, like when you stake a vampire in real life, normally when you stake a vampire, like they turn to dust, right? And I think even in the book, maybe he turned to dust. I can't remember. But yeah, so that wouldn't happen. But like if you're positing a universe where you stake the vampire and then he just lays there all staked and dead again, you're gonna run into problems before the advent of, like, you know, forensic science or anything that says, hey, this person's been dead 500 years. It's like, yeah, you're going to be like a murder suspect.
I thought the murder suspect angle was more like filler more than anything else. Most of the material was just kind of a filler to flesh it out, and it would have been better to get rid of that and then put more Dracula time in there with Bella.
More Dracula time.
And more like action, things actually happening, maybe like another murder scene. She killed another girl. You know what I mean? What you're saying. They just use that as filler, if you ask me.
Well, and now that you say it, it doesn't really end up. I think it's weird because it
wasn't
seems
an important story element.
Well, yeah, it's like I think it was only in there, so it's like we could reiterate like what vampires are and how they work and everything like that. Because you have to think this is like the 1930s, and also it had been 5 years since the first film, so it's not like it's not like nowadays where you can binge like a whole series or something like that like in one night, so you don't have to like remember shit from like 5 years ago. Yeah. But so maybe that's what it was. They were trying to like catch everyone up, and they thought that would be a good way to do it.
But they always underestimated people's intelligence.
Well, they did. I know.
I wouldn't have explained shit. I'd have just shown it to them and fucking let them wonder what the fuck happened. Well, that's just what vampires do. You know what I mean? Somebody else later on, you could have Van Helsing there to go, yeah, what happens is vampires tend to do this and that, which explains it a little bit later.
Yeah.
Shit like that.
Yeah. And I would have thought, like, because Dracula was such a big hit, and a lot of people had read the novel too, or seen it on stage.
People probably knew.
So you'd think that, like, that even back then, like all of the vampire tropes would have been pretty well established.
They were probably pretty well. I imagine they were well.
But like you said, I kind of feel like I kind of feel like this happened up until. Thank you, Jeffy Art. Thanks, you very much.
What is it?
It's a little guy going incredible.
Oh, okay.
I kind of feel like up until maybe even the 1960s. I feel like a lot of movies, not all of them obviously, but a lot of movies they kind of aired on the side of over-explaining everything. Yeah. Like when there was shit that obviously like most people probably would have known and they didn't need to explain.
I think it was filler. I think
maybe.
I think they just needed dialogue.
Yeah.
To fill the movie out, which that was the problem with these things. Don't make a movie unless you can afford to shoot it. You know what I mean?
Well, unless you have, an hour and a half worth of material.
Yeah. Shoot action stuff. Show, don't tell. That's just a sign of a good movie. And they did do that kind of stuff in the 30s. They showed, look at King Kong. King Kong fucking showed you shit. It didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
It didn't explain fucking why there were fucking dinosaurs on that island. It didn't really explain.
There just are.
It just are. It didn't explain why fucking Kong was so big.
He
was fucking huge. It didn't explain why there were damn, tribesmen on there with a big wall holding him back. You just looked at it and went, oh fuck. You made up your own explanations. And it worked.
I mean, it was pretty you could. The implication was, the implications were pretty clear, I guess.
That it was like a prehistoric fucking island, fucking where things got fucking big, giant dinosaurs and giant gorillas and giant walls, and hey, man.
Even though it's funny because in real life, from an evolutionary standpoint, animals that evolve on islands tend to be much smaller than their mainland counterparts, not bigger.
Yeah, and
which makes sense. When
and fucking primates are not from the dinosaur era.
No.
Yeah, a long time later.
Well, yeah, but I kind of feel like most people are just like, whatever. It was it was a long time ago, and it was big. Yeah. Well, and the thing about it, too, with King Kong, they were just probably like, well, kids love dinosaurs. We're going to put dinosaurs in there, too. Who cares if, like, dinosaurs and apes don't live at the same time?
There were some deleted scenes that were never put in there where Kong fights a giant spider. I think there's some of that still around, but...
I've seen clips of it, but I don't... It's in kind of shitty condition.
Yeah, evidently they cut it out. It was hard to do, and I think the explanation was they thought it would upset people too much, that big old spider. But I don't know. But it was a huge fucking spider. Kong fighting it. I'd like to have seen that.
Pat says, don't forget, oh god, the wild, wild world of Batwoman, also known as She Was a Hippie Vampire. Better yet, on second thought, do forget it because it really, really sucks bad. I agree, it is a terrible, terrible movie. However, it made a very entertaining Mystery Science Theater episode. It was kind of like, they were vampires, but also superheroes. And it was one of the weirdest movies ever made. Really weird.
Sounds like something came out of Turkey.
It was almost that bad. It was almost that quality. Even though I'm pretty sure it was an American movie.
Okay.
But you probably seen it because I think I watched the MST episode not too long ago. It's an awful, awful movie. Yeah. But like the MST episode is like super funny.
Turkey had a hard time accepting that Spider-Man and Batman were good guys. They just couldn't accept that. Not looking that way. You know.
This will not stand. Yeah. They must be villains.
They must be villains.
Pat says producers still underestimate people's intelligence. Yeah. They do, but I don't think it's to the same extent as... Because, man, sometimes I'll watch movies, and like I said, it's not across the board, because I've seen movies from the 40s and 50s that, left a lot to your imagination or left you to figure shit out on your own. But I kind of feel like a lot of movies from like pre-1960s that were meant for like a mass audience, like a mainstream audience, would just explain the shit out of everything. Like you'd have to have these scenes where like all these dudes were like sitting around talking in a room explaining like really, really simple shit. Yeah. Which I'm just like, yeah, everybody here has been to 6th grade. We know all this stuff.
I have a feeling that the people knew that back then, what they were explaining.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that it was a kind of a case where everyone was dumb back then and they don't know that shit.
I think they knew.
Yeah, I think they did know that shit.
It was just filler.
Yeah. Yeah. Mango says, if you want a movie with no filler, then watch House of Dracula in the Universal Horror series. Just gets on with it and done and dusted in over an hour.
What year is that? House of Dracula.
Yeah, House of Dracula.
That sounds
I can't think of that. Yeah. Like I said, we're going to have to like watch more Universal because there's so many that I miss. I kind of feel like this one, because it started, the Universal, the first wave, because they came in waves, kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah. So the first wave started in 1931, obviously, with Dracula. And then I feel like this movie in 1936, this was kind of like the end of the first wave. Because after this, they still made them, but... they weren't quite as popular. And this movie actually did pretty well. It obviously didn't do as well as the original Dracula, but it did get like decent reviews and it did like do pretty good at the box office
I put this movie, it reminded me a lot of Cat People, the original Cat People, but I put it above Cat People. I think it's better than Cat People. Cat People had some slow parts to it.
Yeah, and this one doesn't really, and I love Cat People, but the Val Lewton movie from the 40s. But yeah, it does have some like slow bits to it, and it's not, and it's only barely horror. Yeah. I feel like this one has a lot more, and honestly, Cat People is a little bit more noir. Yeah. Whereas this one is a lot more gothic. Yeah. This one is this one is more, I wouldn't say it's like overtly a horror movie, but it does have a lot more horror elements and a lot more gothic elements than maybe like Cat People did. And erotic elements too.
Lesbo erotic. You see where Hammer had got some of their inspiration. They saw, so if they could do that, we can beat that. We'll show cleavage. Yeah. A lot of it.
Well, yeah, because by the time
it'll
Hammer...
be in color. And they're like, yeah, okay.
By the time the 60s rolled around, you could show that shit and not get in trouble.
Carmilla was great. I don't know. I think that was Hammer, wasn't it, Carmilla?
Well, there's been a lot of different versions of Carmilla.
The one that I liked was the one that I liked, I think, was Hammer.
Well, there was a version, but it wasn't called Carmilla, though. It was called... was it Daughters of Darkness? Was that Hammer? No, I can't remember.
Okay.
But I know that there was one called
Yeah.
Daughters of Darkness that was based. There's been like a lot that were
Okay.
based on Carmilla though. But I don't know. There have been some that were called Carmilla. But that's a pretty... Yeah, it's just funny to think that that story is so old.
Yeah.
You know, but they've made so many. And honestly, I think too, there's a movie called Nadia, and I can't remember what year it came out. I want to say it was the 90s. I remember seeing it, but I think it's kind of like a low-key remake of Dracula's Daughter. You know what I mean? So I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't remember how similar it is. But I mean, this, like I said, this was kind of like the best. Yeah, they could have gone in a different direction with it, but like with what they had, I think this was actually kind of like a really cool take on the Dracula mythos. There's still vampires in it. It still had Van Helsing. It still had all that kind of stuff, but it's its own thing. Honestly, even though it takes place like right after the original Dracula, this could be a standalone. I mean, you could watch this without having seen Dracula.
Yeah,
It
you don't
doesn't
need
really
Dracula.
it doesn't really matter.
No.
I mean, I think that it is cool like to watch them both back to back, but you don't need to have seen the original one to enjoy this one. It kind of it's its own contained story, even though like a couple of the characters overlap. Mango said Hammer made a few from that story. Lust for a Vampire being one. Then there was Vampire Lovers. Yeah.
Vampire Lovers, I think, is the one
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that was the 70s. Did we review that? I kind of feel like we did,
think
but it
that's
was a
what I'm
long
thinking
time
of.
ago.
What was the one with the two twins?
What, Twins of Evil?
Twins of Evil. That
Yeah.
was good too.
Which
The two blonde girls. They were twins.
yeah, the Playboy Bunnies.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah,
fucking-
that was Hammer.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah, we reviewed that one because
Yeah.
I think we made the joke back then. It's like, yeah, they were twins, but also their boobs were twins, so it was
Yeah.
twins.
Yeah.
And it's just like one of the very first shots of the movie is just like whoop down blouse,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, yep, that's Hammer, all right.
The British were great scientists.
They knew how to
great-
get asses into
They were great professors of boobology. All right? They understood the science. Okay, they get people in the fucking theater. All right,
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. Yeah.
I mean,
America understood very much. We liked it.
yeah,
Just
we see your game. We
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Blood and boobies.
Oh, fucking England had fucking bodacious fucking boob game, man, back in the day.
They
I don't
did,
know
yeah.
if they're still like that, but shit, man. Fucking Benny Hill. Remember those fucking
Yeah, I remember that.
Series?
They used to show that on PBS
Yeah,
over
that's
here.
fucking hilarious.
For those of you in the UK.
Yeah.
They used to, they show that on public television over
Yeah.
here. They showed like a lot of British stuff. They showed like Benny Hill, Are You Being Served?
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to see Benny Hill
great
like in the
series.
70s, like when
Yeah.
I was a kid, when I was a little kid,
Benny Hill made sure that there was going to be some hot women on the down.
and they would be running around
and fucking
and
garters
bouncing.
and shit and bouncing. He got under a lot of attack. People said that he must be some kind of sexist. Everybody said he was just a quiet guy, mostly just living at home, lived modestly, for his income, and was just a regular guy. He evidently was really upset about these fucking attacks. I think it's terrible. He was just a comedian,
Yeah, and that was very much in the zeitgeist at the time.
right? Yeah.
Like that was kind of
Sure.
like the guy chasing the secretary around the desk
Yeah.
and her boobs bouncing and stuff. Everybody was.
You were
doing
supposed
that
to
kind of
laugh
shit.
at it. It was silly.
Everybody was doing it.
Yeah, it was just
yeah,
silly
it was
shit.
just silly. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Yeah, if you did it like serious, then
Yeah.
okay, that might be problematic. But yeah,
No.
it was just kind of like
No, the
goofy.
joke was always on the man.
Yeah,
Always on the man.
Yeah,
The joke wasn't on the women. It was on the men. But what dogs they were,
yeah,
and that how
yeah. That's what they
that
were.
women were fucking.
That's
kinda,
what they were lampooning.
Yeah, that women kind of dominated men in a way.
Well, and then it's like, look what we have to put up with, kind
Right,
of
yeah,
thing
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
We can't even get any work done because these motherfuckers keep chasing us around the
Yeah.
desk all day long.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus Christ. Mango says the Collinson twins. That's who was in Twins of
Yeah,
Evil.
yeah,
I met
yeah.
them.
Yeah, really?
When did? Yeah, really? Okay. Were they
yeah.
nice?
They were cute, man.
They were
Really
cute back then
really
in the
cute,
day.
yeah.
Man, I love Hammer movies. We
Yeah.
probably should do more Hammer movies
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Like
once-
after we get through with like the Universal.
The costumes were real good. The sets were good, especially once it started getting into the late '60s and the '70s. They looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think we
And there
did.
was just going to be hot boobage in there, man.
Yeah.
Fucking- they had that girl that British actress that was in the old Excalibur. She would show up in them every now and then. She was smoking hot too. What was that woman's name? Blonde. She played the sorceress Fucking Morgana, right? Wasn't her
Well,
name?
that was Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren, yeah.
I didn't remember Helen Mirren being in any Hammer
pretty sure
movies.
she was in,
she?
Yeah, she was in some Hammer flicks. Yeah, if I remember correctly. She was the one that played, the one that was, I think it was Morgana was her name, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
It was Arthur's half-sister, who ended up becoming the sorceress. I forgot, yeah. She was cute. With the fishnets and shit.
Yeah.
Proto-goth kind of outfit they had her in. A lot of goth girls wore that.
Yeah,
kind
Mango
of shit
said,
here.
nope, she was not in Hammer. That's
She
what
was
I
not?
thought. No.
I thought she was.
No.
She was in one of those British...
She's been in fuck tons of movies. She was in fuck tons of British movies and British TV shows and everything like that. But she wasn't in any Hammer ones.
Okay.
No.
She was in some British horror movie that I thought was a Hammer movie.
I've seen her in tons of stuff, but I don't remember her being in any Hammer movies. Okay. Now, and I know that there's like a fuck ton of Hammer movies, and I haven't seen them all, but I'm pretty sure that she was.
Either that or I just got her confused with somebody else.
I think that's probably what happened. Pat said, I remember seeing a black and white female vampire movie in the theater. Was that Nadia? It might have been, because I think Nadia was black and white. Speaking of cool modern black and white female vampire movies, recommend The Addiction. Yeah, that's also good. That was the one with Lily Taylor, I think. I remember seeing that one. And then somebody mentioned A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which was also another vampire movie. And that was also very good. Also black and white, matter of fact. Yeah, Mega said they were very nice ladies. Took time to answer questions and have a drink with you, too. How old were they when you met them? Just out of curiosity. Because I know, when did Twins of Evil come out? 1972? I feel like it was early 70s. We should probably do more Hammer, like I said. I remember we did, fairly recently, we did the first Christopher Lee Dracula movie, which in UK is just called Dracula, but over here is called Horror of Dracula. That was 1958. And I remember you not loving it because you're like, well, this hasn't really, got up to the standard. I do kind of feel like the Dracula movies got better later on. Although I do love the end of Horror of Dracula, though.
Pat Hatfield said Tom's got it exactly. I don't know exactly what he's talking about. He must be talking about Hammer and boobs.
What, the boobs?
Must be, yeah.
Florida Dude says, we need a t-shirt saying, let me see your Hammer boobs.
Yeah.
Zach just got here. Hello, what did I miss? Pretty much the whole show,
you missed
dude.
The fucking show, Zach.
Mango said they were in their early 50s, as I recall, and they looked stunning. I'd be curious are they still around?
They'd be in their 70s now, I think.
I guess, but, that doesn't mean anything.
They would have been late teens, early 20s in the 70s, which would put them in their 70s now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Twins of Evil was early 70s. Mark says, I'm listening to Vampire Lestat on audiobook. I'd love to see it on screen. Yeah, I mean, I kind of always wish they had done, like, the movie trilogy good back in the old days. Like, the first one was Interview with the Vampire was good, but then they did Queen of the Damned, and it's like they didn't even do Lestat. They just kind of, like, tried to cram Lestat into Queen of the Damned, and it's like those are two big, huge chunkers of novels, and it's like there was just too much they took out.
And Queen of the Damned, that book is not movieable. There's a lot. I can't see how you could really make that book into a movie that would be coherent. The stuff that was in that movie, there's so much shit in the book that was left out.
Like I said, anything like that has just got to be a series. I don't even know what you're thinking, like attempting to turn it into a movie.
Well, and a lot of that book is like things that Lestat remembered, that too. You know what I mean? So how do you make that in a movie? Because if I remember correctly, some of that book, he's basically narrating a lot of it. Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I read it.
Yeah,
it's in here somewhere.
He's remembering things that he did a long time ago, and remembering what vampire he made, and remembering how he was well, actually, that was Vampire Lestat, is where he's remembering how he got made and how that fucking Magnus bit him. It was an old fucking sorcerer. It was just Queen of the Damned. I don't remember if he narrates that or not. I haven't read it in so long.
Yeah, one of these days I'll have to sit down and read all of those again, because I haven't read them in years and years.
Just go through them things, man.
I have them somewhere. You know what? I don't think, have they ever made her like witch books into a series or movies or anything? Some of those were pretty good.
Another good one was Memnoch the Devil.
Yeah, I liked that one too.
Yeah, Lestat's in that. Then there's Tale of the Body Thief. That was great too.
I liked that one.
Yeah, Lestat's in that one. It's about a dude who learned how to astrally project and then steal other people's bodies.
As you do.
Yeah, and he wanted to steal the Stat's body because he wanted to be a vampire.
He's like, ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm
going to take that one.
Yeah.
Which, that's understandable.
Right, and having had a fucking spontaneous OBE before, I could see how that might be plausible that you might be able to steal somebody else's body.
And make off with it.
Yeah. Now, he was able to steal with a person who was in catatonia, remember? It was a comatose kind of person. He stole that body from a hospital.
Yeah.
And that's how he left his body behind and got a new one. I forgot why he left his original body behind, if he was sick or if he was imprisoned or something. He needed a new body.
Yeah, I don't
He could
remember
jump
that
from
either.
one body to the next using astral projection. Plausible.
Mark says the Witch novels are made into a series. It's coming to AMC in the next month or so. Yeah, it was like
Okay.
It surprised me that it took this long because those books have been out forever.
There was Lasher too, but I don't remember if I remember
that one being okay.
Yeah, I don't remember if I read that one. Which one was that one about?
Shit, I don't
Wasn't
remember.
that about the Egyptians?
I don't remember.
Or
It's been such a long time.
Or something I forgot what that was about. I don't. Maybe I didn't read that one. Maybe I just remembered the title.
I read it, but I don't remember which one it was.
Right.
Zach says, to be honest, I think Lestat is Tom Cruise's best role from an acting perspective.
I think it is.
Like, I actually believe him in his least believable part.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is one of his. I think.
Yeah.
Well, he does really good as Ethan Hunt too.
Yeah.
But
we've said this before.
Really
I think he's better when he's a villain, or like he plays an asshole. Like, because he was great in Magnolia, because he was a dick in that too.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And Lestat was a dick, but he was kind of lovable.
Yeah, he was a lovable dickhead.
He was just arrogant as fuck, man. Tom Cruise, perfect for that.
Yeah. That's what I mean. That was like good casting.
Yeah.
Hugo says, Jenny, have you seen Near Dark? Yes, matter of fact, I've seen it several times. And we did a review of it not too long ago. Right? That was the one with Bill Paxton, Yeah. Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen, and they were all like the vampire gang. You know what I mean? That was kind of like a Western type thing.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then Richard Brown said Poppy Z. Bright. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember her.
Yeah. They're, I really liked Drawing Blood, Lost Souls. That was the first one.
I think she's a man now, isn't she?
Yeah, she's trans.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what her name, she changed her name.
Yeah.
But, they, like... Exquisite Corpse is fucked up too. Did you ever? It's not a vampire novel. It's about serial killers, but that's one of the most fucked up things I've ever read. Yeah. But it's great. It's great, but it's really, really fucked up. Really fucked up. All right. So, are we ready to call it a day? All right. So, thanks everybody for dropping by, listening to us talk about Universal. We'll probably do some more Universal monsters and maybe some Hammer, going forward, because we're having a good time watching these old ones. And tomorrow night is our main show, and I'm kind of excited about this one because we're going to be talking about the Lisa McPherson case.
Okay.
The Church of Scientology.
I'm ready for that one.
And the Lisa McPherson death.
Yeah, I'm ready for that one.
So we're going to be talking about that one. So we might be getting sued. It might be exciting. Maybe not. We've done other shows about Scientology before.
They're not doing
and nobody's sued us.
doing that well right now. They're evidently having some problems right now, so we'll see.
Yeah, well.
I don't think they'd be coming after us.
I mean, but if they did, maybe we'd get more attention. But maybe not, because it's I don't know. Nobody listens.
I'd live stream that shit. They'd have the squirrel busters come up to the fucking house with their cameras.
Oh my god, that'd be hilarious.
The tactics that they used in the past don't work anymore, so they don't use them.
Yeah. Zach said, oh, yay. I mean, boo for Lisa, but still yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good show. And like I said, I have a little bit of a personal connection there because I know some of the people that that were at that trial because they knew her. She worked at the same company that I worked at when I lived there, except several years earlier. So, that should be fun. So, you guys, we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.